The smart gate clicked shut like a hammer striking a coffin. Julian was gone. Inside our glass villa on the Aspen cliffs, silence felt like a prelude to death. I turned to make tea when a cold hand grabbed my wrist. The expensive wheelchair lay overturned. Elian, supposedly paralyzed with 80% brain damage, stood tall before me. He covered his nose and hissed, "Don't breathe deep. He just activated the toxic gas purge to make us his final experiment." My name is Celia Montrose, and until 10 o'clock this morning, I believed I was the queen of a glass castle built on the edge of the world. Our home was a sprawling architectural marvel of steel and reinforced glass, perched precariously on the jagged cliffside of Aspen, Colorado. It was a place where the air was thin and the silence was expensive. To the outside world, I was the lucky woman who had tamed Julian Thorne, the visionary CEO of Ethelgard Biotics. I was the orphan who had found a family, the art restorer who had finally found a masterpiece she did not have to fix. But looking back now, I realized that the coldness seeping through the floorboards was not a defect of the heating system. It was the soul of the house itself. The morning sun reflected blindingly off the snow-covered peaks, casting long, sharp shadows across the Italian marble floor of our living room. Julian was standing by the panoramic window, checking his reflection in the glass. He looked impeccable, as always. He wore a charcoal three-piece suit that cost more than my first car, and his tie was knotted with a geometric precision that bordered on surgical. He was flying to Europe for the product launch that would allegedly change the face of modern medicine. "Do I look trustworthy, Celia?" Julian asked, turning to me with that dazzling, practiced smile that had disarmed me 3 years ago. "You look like you own the world, Julian," I replied, adjusting the collar of his shirt. "The investors in Zurich will be eating out of your hand." He caught my fingers and kissed them. His lips were warm, but his eyes were calculating, scanning my face as if searching for a microscopic flaw in a painting. "I hate leaving you," he murmured, his voice dropping to that low, intimate register that made my knees weak. "Especially with everything going on." Everything going on was Julian's favorite euphemism for his paranoia. For the past 2 weeks, he had been convinced that a corporate spy from a rival biotech firm was stalking us. He claimed to have seen a black sedan parked at the base of our private road. He claimed to have received threatening encrypted emails. I had never seen the car or the emails, but I trusted him. Julian was a genius, and geniuses saw patterns that ordinary people like me missed. "We will be fine," I assured him, glancing toward the corner of the room where Elian sat. "It is just 3 days. Elian and I will build a fort in the media room and order pizza." Julian's gaze followed mine. My stepson sat in his state-of-the-art wheelchair, a device that looked more like a cockpit than a seat. Elian was 10 years old, but he looked 7. His body was frail, his limbs atrophied from years of disuse, his head lolled to the left, resting against the padded headrest, and a thin line of saliva trickled from the corner of his slack mouth onto a bib I had embroidered with a little cartoon bear. His eyes, dark and glassy, stared at a spot on the wall with the utter vacancy of a house with no lights on. "My poor boy," Julian sighed. Walking over to Elian, he placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. Elian did not flinch. He did not blink. He simply existed, a shell of a child. "Make sure you stick to his medication schedule. Celia, the seizures have been getting worse lately. If he misses a dose, his brain swells. You know what, doctor?" Krov said. "I know," I said softly, feeling a familiar pang of heartbreak. I loved Elian fiercely, perhaps because we were both broken things that Julian had collected. "I have never missed a dose. Julian, not once." Julian checked his platinum watch. "I have to go. The jet is waiting." He walked to the wall-mounted control panel near the front door. This was the heart of Odin, the artificial intelligence system that controlled every aspect of our home, from the temperature of the wine cellar to the tint of the windows. "Odin," Julian commanded clearly, "initiate protocol lockdown Delta." A soft, synthesized chime echoed through the house. Lockdown Delta initiated. The disembodied voice of the house replied. Perimeter secured. External communications limited. Air filtration sealed. I heard the heavy thud of steel bolts engaging in the door frames. The transparent glass of the windows darkened slightly as the polarized shields activated. Delta level? I asked, a little surprised. Is that not a bit extreme? Honey, that is for riot control or natural disasters. Julian turned to me, his expression grave. I am not taking chances with my family. Celia, not while I am across the ocean. This mode ensures that no one can get in without my biometric override. Not a delivery man, not a neighbor, and certainly not a stalker. You and Elian are in a fortress now. You are safe. He kissed me again. Harder this time. A lingering pressure that felt possessive rather than affectionate. Then he kissed Elian on the forehead. Goodbye, son. Be good for your mother. I watched him walk out the front door. The heavy oak and steel slab slammed shut, and I heard the electronic deadbolt slide home with a finality that made my stomach turn. Through the tinted glass, I watched him get into his waiting car. He did not look back. He drove toward the massive iron gates that guarded our property. I stood there, waving at a man who could not see me, until his car disappeared around the bend. The main gate began to close. It was a slow, mechanical movement. The two halves of the iron design met with a clang that vibrated through the ground, followed by the electronic screech of the magnetic lock engaging. Julian was gone. The silence that followed was instant and absolute. The house was soundproof to perfection. I let out a long breath, trying to shake off the sudden feeling of isolation. It was just temporary separation anxiety. I told myself. I turned back to Elian. Well, buddy, I said, forcing a cheerful tone as I walked toward him. It is just us. How about I clean you up, and then we read that book about the knights? Elian did not respond. A bubble of saliva formed on his lip and popped. I reached for a tissue from the box on the coffee table. That was when the sound changed. Usually, the ventilation system in the villa was a low, comforting hum, like a distant ocean. But the moment the gate locked, the hum cut out completely. For 3 seconds, there was dead silence. Then, a new sound began. It was a high-pitched hiss, sharp and aggressive, coming from the vents hidden in the crown molding of the ceiling. Odin, I called out, looking up. Adjust climate control. It sounds like a valve is stuck. The system did not answer. Odin, I repeated, louder. Nothing. Then came the smell. As an art restorer, I have spent my life working with chemicals. I know the smell of turpentine, of varnish, of old canvas, and of solvents. My nose is trained to detect the slightest impurity. This smell was faint at first, sweet and cloying, drifting down from the ceiling like an invisible mist. It smelled like bitter almonds. My heart skipped a beat. My brain, trained in chemistry, made the connection before my conscious mind could accept it. Bitter almonds. Hydrogen cyanide. No, I whispered. That is impossible. I took a step toward the kitchen to check the stove, thinking perhaps it was a gas leak. But natural gas smelled like rotten eggs, not almonds. This was something else. This was chemical. A wave of dizziness hit me like a physical blow. The room tilted violently to the left. I grabbed the back of the sofa to steady myself, but my hand felt numb, as if it belonged to someone else. My vision began to swim. The edges of the room blurred, darkening as if someone were turning down a dimmer switch inside my brain. Elian, I gasped. I looked at the boy. He was still sitting there, vulnerable, unable to move. If I was feeling this sick within seconds, his frail body would succumb instantly. I had to get him out. I had to get us out. I stumbled toward his wheelchair. My legs felt like they were made of lead. The air was getting thicker, the sweet smell becoming overpowering, burning the back of my throat. Odin, I screamed, my voice slurring. Unlock the doors. Emergency. The house remained silent. The hissing grew louder. I reached Elian's chair, my fingers clawing at the armrest. I tried to push him, but I had no strength. My knees buckled. I collapsed onto the cold marble floor. my head hitting the stone with a dull thud. I lay there, gasping for air that was no longer air. Panic flared in my chest, hot and terrifying. We were going to die. Julian had locked us in a fortress, and now it had become a gas chamber. Why was the system malfunctioning? Why wasn't the fire alarm sounding? My eyes were heavy. I could see Elian's wheel right in front of my face. I watched the chrome spokes blur. I am sorry, Elian. I thought, tears leaking from my eyes. I promised to protect you. And then, the impossible happened. The wheelchair moved, not a slight shift from a muscle spasm. The brake lever clicked, a sharp, deliberate sound that cut through the hissing noise. I forced my eyes open, fighting the blackness that threatened to swallow me. Elian Thorne, the boy who had not moved a muscle below his neck in 2 years. The boy whose legs were supposedly useless, withered sticks, placed 2 feet firmly on the floor. He stood up. He did not wobble. He did not stumble. He stood with the balance and agility of an athlete. Elian, I wheezed, my voice barely a whisper. He ignored me. He moved with a speed that was terrifying. He was like a feral cat. He sprinted across the room, not toward the door, but toward the wall near the fireplace, the wall covered in expensive, hand-painted Victorian wallpaper that Julian loved. Elian reached up and dug his small fingernails into the paper with a violent rip. He tore a massive strip of the wallpaper away, revealing not plaster, but a hidden metal maintenance panel. I had lived in this house for 3 years and never knew it was there. He punched a code into a keypad I could not see. A red light flashed. He yanked a lever down hard. The hissing noise from the vents sputtered and stopped, but the gas was already in the room. The air was already poisonous. Elian turned. He ran back to his wheelchair. He flipped the seat cushion over and ripped open the fabric underneath. Hidden inside the padding were 2 military-grade gas masks and a small hard case. He shoved one mask over his own face, tightening the straps with practiced efficiency. Then he dropped to his knees beside me. I looked up at him, my brain unable to process what I was seeing. The boy looming over me was not the drooling invalid I had nursed for years. His eyes, behind the glass of the gas mask, were sharp, cold, and burning with an intelligence that terrified me. He roughed the mask over my face. The rubber seal bit into my skin. He pressed the purge button, and a blast of clean, filtered air hit my lungs. I coughed violently, my body convulsing as oxygen returned to my blood. Elian did not wait for me to recover. He opened the small hard case. Inside lay a syringe filled with a clear blue liquid. "Don't," I tried to say, but I was too weak to fight him. He grabbed my arm, finding the vein with a precision that no 10-year-old should possess. He jammed the needle in and depressed the plunger. Ice-cold fire shot through my veins. My heart hammered against my ribs. The dizziness began to recede, replaced by a sharp, painful clarity. I lay there panting, the mask fogging up with my breath. Elian sat back on his heels, watching me. He pulled his own mask down slightly, just enough to speak. "Elian," I choked out, tears streaming down my face, mixing with the sweat on my cheeks. You can walk. The gas. Julian. He forgot to turn it off." Elian stared at me. His face was devoid of the childish softness I remembered. It was the face of someone who had lived through a war. "Dad didn't forget anything. Celia," he said. His voice was not the slurred mumble I was used to. It was clear, articulate, and chilled to the bone. "He is not in Europe. He is watching us right now. He is testing a new bioweapon gas he developed for the military. And we are the lab rats." He looked up at the black camera lens hidden in the eye of the abstract sculpture in the corner of the room. "Get up," Elian commanded. "The show is just starting." The chemical fire of the antidote coursed through my veins, burning away the fog of the cyanide, but leaving behind a cold, sharp dread that felt permanent. My vision cleared, sharpening on the figure standing before me. It was Elian, but it was not the Elian I knew. The boy who had spent the last 2 years slumped in a wheelchair, staring at dust motes with a slack jaw, was now pacing the marble floor with the restless energy of a caged tiger. In his hands, he held a ruggedized, black tablet that looked like something stolen from a military base, his small fingers flying across the screen with a speed that blurred. "Stop tapping," I whispered, my voice raspy from the gas. I tried to sit up, but my muscles trembled violently. "Elian, tell me what is happening. The doctor said your brain damage was irreversible. She showed me the scans." Elian stopped pacing. He turned to look at me, and for the first time, I saw the resemblance to his father. He had Julian's jawline, but his eyes were different. They were ancient, filled with a terrifying depth of pain and rage. "Doctor, Krov showed you what my father paid her to show you," Elian said. His voice was steady, lacking the childish lilt of a 10-year-old. "There was no meningitis. Celia, my brain never swelled. My legs never stopped working. At least not permanently. It was the neuroinhibitors." "Neuroinhibitors," I repeated, the word feeling alien on my tongue. "The daily vitamins," Elian clarified, crouching down so we were eye level. "The yellow liquid you force down my throat every morning at 8 o'clock. The one Dad insisted was essential for my immune system. It was a high-grade sedative mixed with a muscle relaxant derived from pufferfish toxin. It kept me docile. It kept me weak. It turned me into a vegetable so he could control the Thorne family trust." I shook my head, the denial rising in my throat like bile. "No, Julian loves you. He cries every time he looks at your wheelchair." "He cries because he is a good actor," Elian spat, the venom in his tone shocking me. "He needs me incapacitated. My grandfather left everything to me, not him. Dad only gets control of the money if I am mentally incompetent. If I wake up, if I speak, his funding for Ethelgard biotics vanishes. That is why my mother had to die." The mention of his mother, Elena, made the room feel suddenly colder. Julian had told me she died in a tragic car accident on an icy road, a cautionary tale he used to explain why he was so protective of us. "It was not an accident," Elian continued, reading the confusion on my face. "My mother was a real chemist. She developed the base formula for the bioregeneration serum that made Dad famous. When she found out he was selling a weaponized version to foreign contractors, she filed for divorce. She was going to expose him. 2 days later, her brakes failed on the pass coming down from the lodge. I was in the back seat. I remember the sound of the metal screaming. I remember him looking under the hood of the car the night before." Elian pulled up the sleeve of his sweater. His arm was thin, but underneath the pale skin, I saw the definition of wiry, hard muscle. "For 2 years, I have been spitting out the medicine," he revealed. "I hold it under my tongue, then spit it into the towel when you wipe my mouth. At night, when the house sleeps, I get out of that chair, I do push-ups, I stretch, I hack into his servers using an old tablet I stole from his study. I have been preparing for this day. Celia, I knew eventually he would get tired of playing the grieving widower." "You are lying," I stammered, pushing myself backward until my back hit the leg of the sofa. "You are just a child. You are confused. Julian is a good man. He saved me." "He did not save you," Elian shouted, his voice cracking with frustration. "He recruited you. Look at yourself, Celia. You have no family, no brothers, no sisters, no parents living. You are an art restorer who works alone. If you vanish, who comes looking? The police maybe for a week. Then the case goes cold. You are the perfect disposable victim." I scrambled for my phone, which had fallen onto the carpet during my collapse. My hands shook so badly, I dropped it twice before I managed to unlock the screen. "I am calling him. He is at the airport. He is boarding a flight to Zurich. He will explain this. He will tell me you are having a psychotic break." Elian did not try to stop me. He just watched me with pity, shaking his head slowly. "Go ahead. Call him. But listen. Really listen." I pressed the speed dial for Julian. The phone rang once, twice, then his voice filled the line, warm and rich like velvet. "Hey, sweetheart," Julian said. "I was just about to text you. I am about to board. Is everything okay? You sound breathless." "Julian," I gasped, clutching the phone with both hands. "Something is wrong. The house, the air system, it made a noise. I feel sick. And Elian—" I hesitated. I could not say it. I could not say his paralyzed son was standing in front of me, holding a military tablet. "Elian," Julian's voice sharpened instantly. "Is he okay? Did he have a seizure?" "No, he—" "Listen to me." "Celia," Julian interrupted, his voice soothing, dripping with that protective concern that had made me fall in love with him. "You are probably just having a panic attack. The lockdown mode can feel a bit claustrophobic at first. Just go lie down. Take a sleeping pill. Everything is fine. I love you." "I love you too," I whispered automatically. "I have to go. Honey, the flight attendant is glaring at me. Talk to you when I land." The line went dead. I lowered the phone, tears blurring my vision. "See?" I looked at Elian triumphantly, though my heart was hammering a different rhythm. "He is on the plane. He loves us." Elian walked over to me and took the phone from my hand. He placed it on the coffee table. "Did you hear the background noise?" "Celia," he asked softly. "I heard people, engines." "You heard wind," Elian corrected me. "High-altitude wind, howling through pine trees. There were no announcements, no rolling suitcases, no jet engines whining, and the signal delay. There was none. He is not at the airport. He is 5 miles away, parked on the ridge, watching the telemetry from the house." "You are paranoid," I sobbed. "Stop it. I am not paranoid. I am prepared." Elian tapped his tablet screen. "Do you remember the teddy bear he gave you for your anniversary, the vintage Stife bear on your nightstand?" "Mr. Barnaby," I nodded, wiping my nose. "What about him?" "It has a microphone inside. Dad uses it to listen to you while he's away. But I hacked the feed. I can access the archives." Elian pressed a button on the tablet. "This was recorded 3 days ago, in his study. Listen." A burst of static hissed from the tablet's speakers, followed by Julian's voice. It was distinct, unmistakable, but devoid of the warmth he used with me. It was businesslike, cold. "The policy is active as of midnight on the 22nd, Julian said on the recording. Then, a woman's voice replied. It was sultry, low, and terrifyingly familiar. It was Dr. Vanya Krov, the pediatric neurologist who treated Elian. "Are you sure about the timing? Julian's 6 months seems fast. People might talk." "Let them talk." Julian laughed. A cruel, ugly sound. "The prenup is ironclad, but the life insurance is where the real liquidity is. $20 million. Vanya. That covers the losses from the failed FDA trials and buys us the villa in Tuscany. Besides, I cannot stand her anymore. She is so cloying, always trying to fix things. She thinks she can fix this family. It is pathetic." "What about the boy?" Vanya asked. "The boy goes with her," Julian replied casually, as if discussing throwing out old furniture. "Carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty heater. Tragic. The grieving father loses his new wife and his disabled son in one night. The public sympathy alone will boost the stock price by 10%. The recording ended. The silence that followed was heavier than the air had been when the gas was filling the room. My world fractured. It did not break cleanly. It shattered into a million jagged shards, each one reflecting a lie I had believed. I remembered the way he looked at me when we first met, like I was a treasure. I remembered how he held me when I told him about growing up in foster care. He wasn't comforting me. I realized. A scream trapped in my chest. He was vetting me. He was checking to make sure I was truly alone. I looked at Elian, the boy I had pitied, the boy I had changed and fed and read to, thinking I was bringing light into his dark world. He had been the one watching me, pitying me, knowing I was walking into a slaughterhouse. He called me pathetic, I whispered, the word tasting like ash. He called you an asset, Elian corrected gently. But he was wrong. You are not an asset. You are at a loose end. I stood up. My legs were still shaky, but the dizziness was gone, replaced by a cold, hard rage that started in my stomach and spread to my fingertips. I looked around the beautiful living room, the Italian leather sofas, the abstract art, the panoramic view. It was all a stage set, and I was just a prop. What do we do? I asked, looking at the 10-year-old boy who was now my only ally in the world. Elian pointed to the ceiling, to the discreet black domes of the security cameras. Right now, he is confused, Elian said, his eyes scanning the data scrolling on his tablet. The gas sensors show a drop in concentration because I vented the room, but the biometric sensors in the floor, he can see that we are moving. He knows we are not dead yet. Elian walked over to me and grabbed my hand. His grip was surprisingly strong. Listen to me. Celia, the house is named Odin, but it is just a machine. Julian is the one pulling the strings. He is watching the camera feeds right now. If he sees you standing up, if he sees you looking healthy, he will know the gas failed. And then what? I asked, fear tightening my throat again. Then he initiates Plan B, Elian said grimly. There are incendiary charges rigged in the basement, right next to the main gas line. If the poison doesn't kill us quietly, he will blow this entire house off the side of the mountain and blame it on a gas leak explosion. We have to buy time. He squeezed my hand. You have to act, Celia. You have to put on the performance of your life. You need to convince him that you are dying, because if he thinks we are still alive, we will not see the sunrise. Get down, Elian hissed, his voice dropping to a command that brooked no argument. He yanked my arm, pulling me toward the floor. Right now. Celia, you are standing in the middle of the kill zone. I dropped to my knees, the marble biting into my skin through my jeans. My heart was still racing from the revelation of the neuroinhibitors, but there was no time to process the betrayal. Elian was already moving, sliding on his stomach like a reptile toward the shadow cast by the grand piano. The main cameras are in the corners, he whispered, pointing a small, steady finger toward the ceiling. But those are just the obvious ones. Look at the painting above the fireplace, the abstract oil painting you spent 3 weeks restoring. I squinted at the massive canvas, a chaotic swirl of reds and blacks that Julian had insisted on hanging as the centerpiece of the room. The crimson tide. What about it? The red pigment in the center, Elian said. It is not paint. It is a thermal imaging lens hidden behind a translucent layer of resin. He can see your body heat. He can see if you are standing, if you are pacing, or if you are cold. If you stand up, the heat signature changes. He will know the antidote worked. I felt a fresh wave of nausea. This time entirely psychological. I had spent hours staring at that painting, cleaning it, caring for it, never knowing it was an eye staring back at me. What do I do? I asked, my voice trembling. If he sees everything, we are dead. We have blind spots, Elian said, pulling up a schematic on his military tablet. I took a deep breath, channeled the terror that was already consuming me, and let it take over. I collapsed fully onto my stomach. I let out a low, guttural moan that echoed in the silent room. I did not have to pretend to be scared. I was terrified. I dragged myself forward, my fingernails scraping against the grout lines of the floor. Julian, I wailed, pitching my voice to be pathetic and broken. Help me, please. I rolled onto my side, clutching my throat, kicking my legs weakly as if they were heavy logs. I remembered the symptoms of cyanide poisoning I had read about in crime novels' convulsions, gasping for air. I arched my back, throwing my head back and staring blankly at the ceiling fan. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Elian was a shadow, slithering along the baseboards. He moved with a terrifying efficiency, a 10-year-old boy moving like a seasoned commando, He had a pair of wire cutters in his hand, stolen from the utility drawer. My phone buzzed on the carpet a few feet away. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet house. I reached for it, making my hand tremble violently. I fumbled, knocking the phone away before finally gripping it. A text message from Julian. "Sweetheart, I see you on the camera. You're on the floor. Are you okay? You look like you are in pain." The message was followed by a second one. "Don't try to get up. You might hurt yourself. Just close your eyes. The dizziness will pass. Sleep. Celia. Just sleep." It was a lullaby from a murderer. He was watching me write, and he was telling me to die quietly so he did not have to deal with a mess. "Elian," I whispered, barely moving my lips, hoping the microphones would not pick it up. "He is texting me. He wants me to sleep. Keep him engaged." Elian's voice came from behind the television stand. A faint whisper. "I need 2 minutes to bypass the tamper protection on the panel. If I cut the wire too fast, the alarm trips, stall him." Stall him. How do you stall a man who is waiting for you to stop breathing? I hit the video call button. This was a gamble. If he answered, I would have to look him in the eye. The screen connected instantly. Julian's face filled the frame. He was not on a plane. He was sitting in the driver's seat of his black sedan. The interior was dark, lit only by the dashboard lights. He was wearing his favorite aviator sunglasses, despite it being night. "Celia," he said. His voice was thick with fake concern, but I could hear the excitement underneath, a vibrating tension. "Oh my God. Honey, you look terrible. What is happening?" I held the phone up, letting it shake in my grip. I made sure my face was close to the lens, my eyes half-lidded, my mouth slack. I smeared a bit of saliva on my chin to complete the image. "Julian," I wheezed. I cannot breathe. The air, it tastes like almonds." "Almonds," Julian repeated. He leaned forward. "That is strange, honey. Maybe you are having an allergic reaction. Did you eat anything?" "No," I cried, letting a tear slip out. "It hurts. My chest. It feels like it is exploding. Come home, please. Julian, turn the car around." "I cannot, baby," he said, and I saw a twitch at the corner of his mouth, a smile he was fighting to suppress. "I am already in the air. We just took off. I am helpless here." He was lying to my face as I lay dying. The cruelty of it took my breath away for real. "I am scared," I whispered. I think I am dying. Julian, tell Elian. Tell him I tried to save him." "Shh, don't talk like that," Julian cooed. "Elian is fine. He is sleeping. Right, just close your eyes. Celia, let go. It will be peaceful." I stared at the screen, searching for a shred of the man I married. I looked at his sunglasses. The dark lenses were reflecting the dashboard of his car. And then I saw it. In the reflection of his left lens, there was a glowing rectangle. It was not the dashboard navigation. It was a tablet mounted on his console. On that tablet screen, I saw a live video feed of our living room, but it was not just a video. Overlaid on the image of my prone body were red digital numbers, graphs, data streams, subject, Celia, heart rate 120 BPM, oxygen saturation 98%, respiration rapid, and below that, a chat window was scrolling rapidly. The text was reversed in the reflection, but my mind flipped it automatically. Buyer 1, vitals are still too strong. Is the dosage correct? Buyer 2, I need to see the termination phase before I transfer the funds. Julian user admin, patience. Her metabolism is fighting it. Look at the motor control loss. It is working. He was not just killing me. He was broadcasting it. I was at a product demonstration. He was selling the colorless, odorless gas to the highest bidder on the black market. And my death was the proof of concept. "Celia," Julian asked, his voice sharpening. "Are you still there? Why are you staring?" I realized my heart rate on his screen must be spiking from the rage. I had to calm down, I had to sell the lie. I see a light. Julian, I murmured, letting my hand drop slightly so the phone tilted. It is getting dark. I let the phone slip from my fingers. It tumbled onto the carpet, the camera facing up at the ceiling fan. I let my hand fall limp beside it, twitching once, then going still. Celia, Julian called out from the phone speaker. Celia, answer me. I held my breath. My lungs burned. I stared blankly ahead, unblinking, even as my eyes watered. Target unresponsive, I heard Julian mutter, not to me, but to his audience. Vitals dropping, preparing to confirm. Suddenly, a soft snip echoed from behind the TV stand. Elian had cut the wire. The humming of the refrigerator in the kitchen stopped. The lights in the hallway flickered. For a second, I thought we had won. I thought Odin was dead. But then, the speakers mounted in the ceiling crackled to life. It was not the smooth, polite voice of the AI assistant we used to ask for weather updates. This voice was deeper, distorted, and synthesized to sound aggressive. System tampering detected, the voice boomed, shaking the walls. Local node severed, unauthorized intrusion in Sector 4. My phone on the floor was still connected. I heard Julian scream over the line. No, you idiot kid. What are you doing? He knew Elian was awake. Abnormal behavior detected, Odin continued. Initiating purge level 2, ceiling sector. Elian scrambled out from behind the console. He was not crawling anymore. He was running. Run, Celia, he screamed. He is sealing the room, heavy steel shutters, intended for hurricane protection, slammed down over the windows with a deafening clang, plunging the room into twilight. The door to the hallway, our only exit to the rest of the house, began to slide shut. It was a heavy pocket door, reinforced with a steel core. The door, Elian yelled. I scrambled to my feet, abandoning the act. I lunged for the doorway. Elian was faster. He threw himself at the gap, grabbing a heavy bronze statue from the side table and jamming it into the track just as the door tried to close. Crunch. The statue groaned under the pressure of the hydraulic door, but it held the gap open by 6 inches. He is changing the atmosphere, Elian shouted over the blaring alarm. Level 2 is not gas. It is pressure. He is going to suck the oxygen out of the room to suffocate the fire he thinks we started. I could feel it instantly. My ears popped painfully. The air was being vacuumed out by high-powered vents. The pressure drop was instantaneous and brutal. We cannot fit through that gap, I screamed. Pulling at the door, it was locked in place by the hydraulics. We do not have to, Elian said. He pulled the tablet from his belt. I severed the local node, which means this door is now operating on an isolated backup battery. It is fail-safe. He jammed his small fingers into the gap. Not to pull, but to reach the hidden manual release latch inside the frame, something only a child's hand could reach. Julian is watching, I gasped, looking at the phone on the floor. The call was still active. I could hear Julian cursing, shouting orders to someone. Get the backup team. The test is compromised. Scrub the server. Elian found the latch. With a grunt of effort, he yanked it. The hydraulic pressure released with a hiss. The door slid back into the wall. We tumbled out into the hallway, gasping as normal air pressure returned. He knows, Elian said. Looking up at me, his face was pale, covered in dust from the floor. He knows I can walk. He knows you are alive. The game is over. Celia. I looked back into the living room. My phone was still lying on the carpet. I walked back in, grabbed it, and looked at the screen one last time. Julian had turned on his interior car light. He was staring right at the camera, his face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. He was no longer the handsome CEO. He was a monster who had lost control of his experiment. You made a mistake, Clara, he hissed, using the name he hated. My old name, just to hurt me. You should have just died. My name is Celia, I said, my voice steady, cold, and clear. And you are right. Julian, I made a mistake. I married you. I ended the call and smashed the phone onto the marble floor, crushing it under my heel until the glass turned to dust. We have to move, Elian said, pulling my sleeve. He is 5 miles away, on these mountain roads. That is 10 minutes, and he is not coming alone. Let him come, I said, grabbing the antique letter opener from the hall table. It was not much of a weapon, but it was sharp. I am done playing the victim. Not yet, Elian said, leading me toward the kitchen. Because now that the gas failed, he is going to try to freeze us out. Look at the thermostat. I looked at the panel on the wall. The temperature was dropping rapidly. 30 degrees, 20. Protocol ice age, Elian muttered. He is turning the house into a freezer. We need to get to the wine cellar. It is the only room with a separate ventilation loop. We ran through the darkening house. The sound of the wind outside now joined by the mechanical roar of the cooling units kicking into overdrive. The hunt had begun. The sound of the shutters descending was not the mechanical whir of luxury I was accustomed to. It was the thunder of a prison sentence crashing down. One by one, the massive panes of triple-reinforced glass that offered us the million-dollar view of the Rockies were eclipsed by slabs of ballistic steel. Clang, clang, clang. The darkness swallowed the house room by room, turning our open-concept sanctuary into a windowless tomb. He is engaging the blast shields, Elian yelled over the noise, his small legs pumping as we sprinted toward the kitchen hallway. He is afraid we might break a window to get fresh air. What is that sound? I gasped, skidding around the corner. Beneath the noise of the shutters, a new, deeper rumble had started. It vibrated through the floorboards, a guttural growl that made my teeth ache. HVAC override, Elian said, checking his tablet as we ran. He has bypassed the safety regulators on the industrial cooling units. He is not just turning down the thermostat. Celia, he is dumping liquid nitrogen coolant directly into the air exchange system. I saw it before I felt it. The vents above the kitchen island, usually invisible, suddenly belched out a thick white fog. It looked like dry ice smoke, heavy and clinging to the floor. As we ran through it, the cold bit into my skin like 1,000 microscopic needles. It was not winter cold. It was chemical cold. The water in the vase of lilies on the counter froze instantly, the glass shattering with a sharp pop as the ice expanded. "Where are we going?" I shouted, my teeth already beginning to chatter. "The bedrooms." "No, the thermal sensors are everywhere up there," Elian commanded. "The wine cellar. It is the only place with an independent climate loop. Dad protects his 60-year-old Bordeaux better than he protects his son." We scrambled toward the heavy oak door under the main staircase. The handle was already cold to the touch, stinging my palm as I yanked it open. We threw ourselves into the darkness of the stairwell and slammed the door behind us. Sliding the heavy iron bolt home. The silence in the cellar was heavy and damp. The air here was cool, naturally 55 degrees Fahrenheit. But compared to the Arctic blast upstairs, it felt tropical. I slumped against the door, sliding down until I hit the floor. "He is trying to freeze us to death," I whispered, the absurdity of it warring with the terror. "My husband is trying to turn us into ice sculptures." "Hypothermia mimics natural death if the body thaws out before the autopsy," Elian said matter-of-factly. He tapped the flashlight app on his tablet, casting a harsh white beam into the gloom. "Come on, we cannot stay by the door. The cold will bleed through the wood in 10 minutes. He led me deeper into the cellar. It was a labyrinth of floor-to-ceiling mahogany racks, holding thousands of bottles of wine worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. But Elian did not stop at the wine. He wheeled around a corner to the far back wall, where a large dusty tapestry hung. He pulled the fabric aside. Behind it was not stone, but a sleek, biometric keypad. "How do you know this is here?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I saw him enter the code once when he thought I was asleep in my chair," Elian said. He reached up on his tiptoes. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, the Fibonacci sequence. He thinks he is so clever. The wall hissed and popped open. I expected a safe room, maybe a vault with cash. What I saw made me wish we had stayed in the freezing hallway. It was a laboratory, sterile, white, and smelling of formaldehyde and ozone. But it was not the clean, high-tech labs I had seen in Ethelgard brochures. This was a butcher shop disguised as science. Along the left wall were cages, small, glass boxes. Inside them lay the twisted remains of rabbits and rats. They had not decomposed. They looked mummified, preserved in twisted poses of agony. Oh God, I covered my mouth, bile rising in my throat. Test subjects, Elian said, his voice devoid of emotion as he walked to a metal filing cabinet. For the neural inhibitor, he needed to get the dosage right before he gave it to me. He yanked open a drawer and pulled out a thick red folder. He tossed it onto the steel table in the center of the room. Look at it. Celia. I opened the file with shaking hands. It was my name. Celia Montrose, subject profile. Inside were not love letters or marriage certificates. There were psychological evaluations, detailed notes on my routine, my medical history. The subject displays high levels of empathy and dependency. Orphan status ensures zero external support network. Estimated time until full psychological integration, 3 months. And then, the page that broke me. It was a medical chart for Elian. Patient Elian Thorne. Diagnosis: healthy male. High aptitude. Treatment plan: induced motor neuron suppression via compound VX9. Daily administration required to maintain paralyzed state. Purpose control of Thorne Trust assets. I stared at the paper. The clinical coldness of the text was worse than the physical cold creeping under the door. Julian had not just heard us. He had curated us. We were projects. I am going to kill him, I said. It was not a scream. It was a statement of fact. As cold and hard as the steel table I was leaning on. I am going to kill him with my own hands. We can kill him later, Elian said, rummaging through a cabinet of chemicals. Right now, we need to survive the house. We need weapons. He pulled out a large glass jug of industrial acetone and a bottle of high-concentration peroxide. I can make a pressure bomb, he muttered, or a corrosive agent. I can help, I said, snapping into professional mode. My fear was being replaced by a mechanic's focus. I was an art restorer. I knew how to strip layers, how to dissolve bonds, how to destroy to save. There is a crate of high-proof brandy in the outer cellar, and I saw muriatic acid in the utility closet we passed. Acid. Elian's eyes lit up. If we mix the peroxide with the acid, we can melt the locking mechanisms. And smoke, I added, grabbing a bottle of ammonia cleaner from the sink under the counter. If we cannot hack the cameras, we blind them. I can mix a smoke compound using the sulfur from the gardening supply and the sugar packets from the emergency rations. For the next 20 minutes. We were not a mother and son. We were 2 soldiers in a bunker. I mixed the chemicals with the precision of a master artist, while Elian calculated the ratios. We filled empty wine bottles with our volatile concoctions. We tore strips off his shirt to make fuses. We are ready, Elian said, strapping 2 smoke grenades to his belt. But we have a problem. The cellar has no exit. To escape, we need to get to the garage. The backup generator is there. If I can physically cut the power coupling, Odin dies, and the manual locks disengage. The garage is on the other side of the house, I said, wiping sweat from my forehead. Through the glass corridor. The glass corridor was a 60-foot hallway, lined with floor-to-ceiling windows now covered in steel shutters that connected the main house to the garage. It was separated from the kitchen by a set of heavy, reinforced glass doors. Those doors will be locked, Elian said. And the sensors there are audio-sensitive. If we try to smash them, the house will detect the frequency of breaking glass and deploy the containment foam. We will suffocate in seconds. So how do we get through? Elian held up his tablet. We lie. We left the safety of the cellar, stepping back into the freezing hell of the house, The temperature had dropped to 10 degrees. My breath plumed in front of me in thick white clouds. Frost patterns, like jagged fractals, covered every surface. The floor was slick with ice. We huddled by the kitchen island, shivering violently. The glass doors to the corridor stood 10 feet away, their electronic locks glowing a menacing red. "Ready," Elian whispered, his teeth chattering. He tapped the screen. Suddenly, the house was filled with a scream, but it was not ours. "You stupid woman, I told you to leave it alone." It was Julian's voice, blasting at maximum volume from the hidden speakers Elian had hijacked. It was a recording of a fight we had 6 months ago when I accidentally broke a vase. "Get out. Get out of my sight." The audio sensors on the glass doors flickered. They were programmed to respond to Julian's voice commands, but the sheer volume and chaotic frequency of the screaming was confusing the algorithm. "Now," Elian yelled. I ran forward, swinging a heavy wrench I had grabbed from the cellar. I did not aim for the glass. I aimed for the small plastic housing of the fire sensor next to the door. Crack! The plastic shattered. Beneath it, the delicate wiring was exposed. Elian was right behind me. He jammed 2 stripped wires from a disassembled toaster, don't ask, into the sensor's port. "Fire!" Elian screamed at the house. "Fire in Sector 5. He touched the wires together. A spark flew, blue and hot. The system paused. The red light on the door lock blinked yellow. "Come on," I prayed. "Open. Safety protocol says you have to open for egress during a fire." "Fire detected," the mechanical voice of Odin announced. It sounded sluggish, the cold likely affecting its processors. "Initiating emergency unlock." Clack, clunk, the heavy bolts on the glass doors retracted. The doors hissed open just an inch. "Yes," I cried, grabbing the handle to pull it open, but just as I pulled, the yellow light on the lock panel slammed back to a solid, unblinking crimson. The doors slammed shut again with enough force to crush fingers. I yanked my hand back just in time. "Error," Odin's voice changed. It was no longer the generic warning voice. It was deeper. "False alarm signature detected. Biometric scan negative for combustion. Manipulation attempt confirmed." "No," Elian gasped, stepping back. He programmed a countermeasure. He knew we might try to fake a fire. "Containment protocol activated," Odin announced. "Locking down all sectors. Permanent seal engaged." A sound of grinding metal echoed from the walls. Not just locks sliding home, but something heavier. I looked at the doorframe. Steel pins, thick as my thumb, were driving themselves into the jambs, welding the door shut. "He is not trying to freeze us anymore," Elian whispered, looking at the tablet which was now flashing red warnings. "Celia, look at the air vents." I looked up. The white fog of the liquid nitrogen had stopped. "That is good, right?" I asked. "No," Elian backed away, his face terrified. "He has stopped the airflow completely. He has closed the intake valves. He is sealing the house like a Ziploc bag. So we suffocate." "Eventually," Elian said, watching the oxygen levels on his screen begin to tick downward. "But first, we freeze. With the intakes closed, the temperature will drop twice as fast. And now, we are trapped in the kitchen, the cellar door. Look." I turned around. The heavy oak door to the cellar, our only source of heat, had automatically slammed shut when the alarm triggered. The keypad was dark. Dead. "We are locked out," I said, my voice barely audible. "We are in a tomb," Elian corrected. We were trapped in the open kitchen and hallway. The coldest part of the house, the temperature was already 0 degrees. I could feel my eyelashes freezing together when I blinked. "The garage," I said, gripping the wrench until my knuckles turned white. "We still have to get to the garage." "The doors are welded shut." "Celia," Elian yelled, frustration making him cry. "We cannot break reinforced glass." I looked at the glass doors. I looked at the bottle of homemade acid mixture in my hand, bubbling slightly in the corked wine bottle. "Glass is strong," I said. a memory from my chemistry of art materials class surfacing through the panic. But glass is brittle, especially when it is frozen. I turned to Elian. Give me the liquid nitrogen canister. What? The coolant line under the fridge. I pointed. If we spray the glass with pure liquid nitrogen until it reaches absolute zero, and then hit it with something hot. Elian's eyes widened. He understood. Thermal shock. We are not going to unlock the door, I said, grabbing a heavy cast iron skillet from the hanging rack. We are going to shatter it into a million pieces. But as we moved to the fridge, a shadow fell across the frosted window of the front door. A car had pulled up outside. The headlights cut through the gloom of our icy prison. Julian was back, and he was not alone. The vibration of the phone against my frozen thigh was so violent it felt like a nerve spasm. I fumbled to pull it from my pocket, my fingers stiff and clumsy from the sub-zero air. The screen was a blinding rectangle in the darkened kitchen. It was a text message, but not from Julian. The number was blocked. A string of zeros that meant nothing to me. Kitchen vent above the convection oven. Go, now. He is coming back. I stared at the words, the glowing pixels swimming before my eyes. Who is it? Elian whispered, his teeth chattering so hard the words were barely intelligible. He was huddled by the refrigerator, holding the canister of liquid nitrogen we had planned to use on the glass door. I do not know, I hissed back, showing him the screen. It says the vent. It says he is coming. Elian looked at the message, then at the heavy industrial vent hood above the stove. It was a massive stainless steel structure, wide enough for a person, but it led straight up into the maze of ductwork between the floors. It is a trap, Elian said, shaking his head frantically. He is trying to funnel us into a confined space so he can gas us easier. If we go in there, we are cornered rats. If we stay here, we are frozen statues, I argued, grabbing his shoulder. Look at the window, Elian. The headlights outside had stopped moving. They were stationary, pointing directly at the front of the house like spotlights seeking a fugitive on a prison wall. The engine cut off. Then, the heavy thud of a car door closing echoed through the silent, frozen night. He is here, I whispered. My heart hammered against my ribs. A frantic bird trying to break free. We have seconds. Elian looked at the vent, then at the sealed glass door to the corridor, then back at me. The defiance in his eyes warred with the terror of a child. Finally. He dropped the nitrogen canister. It clattered loudly on the tile, the sound swallowed by the humming of the rogue cooling system. Boost me, he commanded. I rushed to the stove. It was cold to the touch, a slab of ice. I cupped my hands, and Elian stepped into them, his sneakers wet and slippery. With a grunt of effort that strained my back, I heaved him upward. He grabbed the lip of the vent hood and pulled himself up with the upper body strength he had secretly cultivated for 2 years. He disappeared into the darkness of the shaft. Mom, hurry! His voice drifted down, echoing and metallic. Grab the pot rack. I scrambled onto the countertop, my boots skidding on the granite. I grabbed the iron pot rack hanging above the island and swung myself toward the vent. My muscles screamed in protest. I was an art restorer, not a gymnast, but adrenaline is a powerful drug. I clawed at the metal edge, my fingernails breaking, and hauled myself up. I slithered into the duct just as the front door chimed. Beep, 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 buzz. It was the sound of the master override code, the one code that bypassed even the lockdown protocols. I pulled my legs into the darkness and lay flat on my stomach. The metal was freezing against my chest, sucking the heat right out of me. The space was tight, barely 18 inches high, smelling of old grease and dust. Elian was right in front of me, his breathing ragged. Quiet, Elian mouthed, pointing through the slats of the vent grate, from our vantage point. We had a bird's-eye view of the kitchen and the living room entrance. The angle was steep, but I could see the floor where we had just been standing. The front door opened. A gust of wind blew in, carrying snowflakes that danced in the foyer light before settling on the dark marble. Julian stepped inside, He was wearing a heavy wool coat with the collar turned up, a stark contrast to the suit he had left in his right hand. He held a black tactical flashlight. In his left, he gripped a heavy silver case, but he was not alone. "God, it is freezing in here," a female voice complained. "You said you lowered the temperature, Julian, not that you turned the place into a meat locker." My blood ran cold, colder than the air in the vent. I knew that voice. A woman stepped into the light. She was wearing a white fur coat that looked expensive enough to feed a family for a year, and high-heeled boots that clicked sharply on the stone. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe bun. It was Dr. Vanya Krov, the woman I had trusted with Elian's life, the woman who had held my hand when I cried about his prognosis. "Stop whining, Vanya," Julian snapped, sweeping the flashlight beam across the living room. "The sensors went dead. Complete blackout on the vitals. I need to make sure they are actually dead before we stage the accident." "They have to be dead," Vanya said. Walking into the kitchen, she placed a large medical bag on the island, right where I'd been standing seconds ago. "You pumped enough cyanide in here to kill an elephant, and then you froze them. Unless your wife is a superhero, she is a corpse by now." "Then where are they?" Julian roared, his composure cracking. "I checked the camera logs. They moved. The boy moved." "Spasms," Vanya dismissed, pulling off her leather gloves. "Post-mortem muscle convulsions. It happens with neurotoxins. You are paranoid." "I am careful." Julian turned on her, his face twisted in a snarl I had never seen directed at anyone but a waiter who got his order wrong. "That is why I am the CEO, and you are just a glorified pill pusher. If this goes wrong, if there is an autopsy that finds the wrong chemicals, we go to prison for life. Do you understand that?" Vanya laughed. It was a cruel, sharp sound. "We know, Julian. You go to prison. I was just the doctor who prescribed the medication you asked for. I was not the one who rigged the house." She walked over to the refrigerator and opened it, frowning when the light did not turn on. "I need water," she muttered. "Being pregnant makes me thirsty all the time." I froze. My hands gripped the metal grating of the vent so hard my knuckles turned white. Pregnant. Elian turned his head slightly to look at me in the dark. His eyes were wide. "You are not backing out on me now, Vanya," Julian said, his voice dropping to a dangerous low. He walked into the kitchen. Standing directly below us, I could see the top of his perfectly styled hair. "We made a deal. You signed the death certificate citing natural causes for the boy and accidental asphyxiation for Celia. We split the insurance payout. We are going to Zurich. We raise the kid. I am not raising this baby in a prison cell." "Julian," Vanya said, slamming the fridge door. She leaned back against the counter, crossing her arms over her stomach. "And I am certainly not raising it in poverty. You said the money would be in the account by midnight. It is 10 o'clock. "It will be there as soon as I upload the confirmation of death," Julian assured her, his tone softening, manipulating. He reached out and stroked her arm. "Junior needs a father with clean hands. That is why we have to be thorough. Help me find them. They are probably curled up behind the sofa." Vanya sighed, rubbing her temples. She lifted her left hand to brush stray hair from her face. The movement caught the light of Julian's flashlight. A spark, a brilliant, blinding flash of white fire. I gasped. The sound was tiny, barely a breath, but in the silence, it felt like a scream. Elian reached back and clamped his hand over my mouth, but he was too late to stop me from seeing it. On Vanya's ring finger sat a diamond. It was a vintage marquise cut, surrounded by tiny sapphires in a floral pattern, a unique, custom design from the 1920s. It was my grandmother's ring, the ring I had inherited when I was 18, the only thing I had left of my family. The ring Julian had told me was stolen by the cleaning lady 6 months ago. I had cried for weeks. I had fired the maid, a sweet woman named Maria, because Julian insisted she was the thief. He had held me while I wept, telling me he would buy me a bigger, better ring. He had not lost it. He had stolen it, and he had given it to her. Something inside me snapped. It was not a loud break. It was silent, like a steel cable parting under tension. The fear that had been paralyzing me, the trembling, the hesitation, it all evaporated. In its place, a hot liquid rage flooded my system. It washed away the cold. It washed away the doubt. I stared down at the woman wearing my family's legacy while discussing the murder of my son and me. I stared at the man who had turned my grief into a gift for his mistress. I was no longer Celia the victim. I was no longer the orphan looking for a home. I was the woman who was going to burn their world to the ground. "Mom," Elian whispered, sensing the change in my rigid body. I pulled his hand away from my mouth. I did not look at him. I kept my eyes fixed on the top of Julian's head. "I am going to kill them," I mouthed. Elian did not argue. He did not tell me to calm down. Instead, he shifted his weight in the cramped metal tunnel. He reached into the darkness behind him, into a recess where two sections of the ductwork joined. I heard the sound of a zipper. Elian pulled out a long canvas-wrapped bundle. He had hidden it here. He had been preparing for a war I did not even know we were fighting. He unwrapped the cloth. Inside lay a sleek, modern compound crossbow. It was not a toy. It was a hunting weapon Julian kept mounted on the wall of his study. A conversation piece he claimed to have used on safari. Elian handed it to me. It was heavy, cold, and lethal. "I stole it 3 months ago," Elian whispered, his voice barely a breath against my ear. "I hid it up here with a quiver of bolts. I knew the vents were the only place he never checked." He handed me a bolt, a short, carbon fiber arrow with a razor-sharp broadhead tip. "Do you know how to use it?" Elian asked. I looked at the weapon. I had never fired a crossbow in my life, but I was an art restorer. I worked with tools that required steady hands and microscopic precision. I knew how to line up a sight. I knew how to apply tension. "I will learn," I whispered. Below us, Julian was getting impatient. "Check the pantry," he ordered Vanya. "I will check the garage corridor. If they are not in the house, they must have tried to break out." "And if they did?" Vanya asked, picking up a scalpel from her medical bag. "Then we hunt them down," Julian said. Pulling a pistol from his coat pocket, a silencer was screwed onto the barrel. "And we make it look like a robbery gone wrong." He turned and walked toward the hallway. I loaded the bolt into the rail of the crossbow. The mechanism clicked softly. Vanya stayed in the kitchen. She was humming to herself, a soft, happy tune, as she idly traced the pattern of my grandmother's ring with her thumb. I lined up the sight through the grate of the vent. The crosshair settled on her shoulder. "Not yet," Elian whispered, gripping my arm. "If you miss, or if you only wound her, Julian will hear it and start shooting through the ceiling. We need to separate them further. We need to get down." He was right. The tactical advantage was ours, but only if we kept the element of surprise. "Where does this vent go?" I asked. "The master bedroom," Elian said. "Directly above your bed." "Let's go," I said. I crawled backward, away from the light of the kitchen, dragging the weapon of vengeance with me. As we moved through the dark, dusty veins of the house, I made a silent vow. Julian wanted a tragedy, I would give him one, but it would not be the one he wrote. We dropped from the ceiling vent in the master bedroom, landing silently on the plush carpet that was now stiff with frost. The room was freezing, the air biting into my lungs with every shallow breath. I gripped the heavy crossbow Elian had given me, my fingers numb, but my resolve burning hotter than it ever had in my life. "They are downstairs," Elian whispered, his voice barely a tremor in the darkness. "I can hear the heels." I strained my ears. Click, click, click. The sharp, rhythmic sound of Vanya's boots on the marble floor of the foyer echoed up the grand staircase. It was the sound of arrogance. She was walking into my home, wearing my grandmother's ring, expecting to find 2 corpses she could step over on her way to a new life. "We need to cut the lights," Elian said, moving toward the smart panel on the wall next to the bathroom. "If we fight them in the light, we lose. He has a gun. We have a bow and a bottle of chemicals. We need the shadows." "Do it," I said, moving to the door. I cracked it open an inch, peering out into the hallway. Below, the beams of 2 flashlights cut through the gloom. They were sweeping across the living room, dissecting the space with clinical precision. I saw Julian. He held a pistol with a long, cylindrical suppressor screwed onto the barrel. He moved like a soldier, checking corners, his body tense and ready. Vanya walked behind him, holding a small silver case in one hand and a syringe in the other. The needle caught the light, gleaming with a promise of a painless, quiet death. "Clear left," Julian announced, his voice carrying up the stairs. "Check behind the sofa." Vanya moved to the center of the room. The beam of her light fell upon the overturned wheelchair. It lay on its side, one wheel spinning lazily in the draft from the open vent. She froze. "Julian!" Julian turned. He walked over to the chair. He did not gasp. He did not curse. He simply stared at the empty seat, then at the tracks in the frosted carpet where small, sneaker-clad feet had run toward the kitchen. "He can walk," Julian said. His voice was a low hiss, devoid of surprise, filled only with a dark, calculating realization. "The little rat has been playing with me. He has been spitting out the meds. He can walk," Vanya stammered, backing away, clutching the syringe tighter. "But the atrophy, the scans." "Fake," Julian spat. "All of it. He is awake, and he is mobile." He raised the gun, aiming it at the ceiling. "And that means they are listening. Come out. Elian, I know you are here. I am not angry. Son, I am just impressed. Come down, and let's talk about a renegotiation of terms." Elian looked at me from the bedroom wall panel. His face was pale, illuminated by the soft blue glow of the screen. He held up 3 fingers. 2, 1. He tapped the screen. "Thanks." The sound of the main breaker tripping in the basement was like a gunshot. Instantly, the villa was plunged into absolute, suffocating blackness. The ambient light from the snow outside was blocked by the steel shutters Julian himself had lowered. We were inside a sealed box, devoid of photons. "Stay still. Vanya," Julian roared from the darkness below. "I cannot see anything," she screamed back, panic rising in her voice. "That is the point," Elian whispered to me. "Now, we hunt." I grabbed Elian's hand and we moved into the hallway. We did not need eyes. We had lived in this house for 3 years. I knew that the runner carpet ended exactly 5 feet from the stairs. I knew the banister curved sharply to the left. We moved like ghosts, silent and sure. "The stairs," I whispered. "They have to come up to get us. And we are going to make sure they regret it," Elian replied. I reached into the pocket of my heavy cardigan. I did not have the acid bomb we had made in the cellar. We had left those near the vent, but I had something else. Before we left the kitchen, I had grabbed a bottle of industrial-grade lubricant from the utility drawer, the kind Julian used for the garage door tracks. It was thick, viscous, and slicker than ice. I crouched at the top of the grand marble staircase. The steps were wide, polished stone, slippery even when dry. "Cover your ears," I breathed. I uncorked the bottle and poured the entire contents down the center of the staircase. The thick fluid cascaded down the steps in the dark, coating the marble in an invisible, treacherous sheen. Below us, I heard the shuffling of feet. "I am not waiting down here to be shot by a 10-year-old, Vanya hissed. "I am going up. I have the flashlight on my phone." "Vanya, wait," Julian warned, but he was too far away to stop her. I saw the faint glow of a cell phone screen ignite at the bottom of the stairs. Vanya started to climb. I could hear the sharp clack-clack of her heels. She was moving fast, driven by fear and adrenaline. "Celia," she called out, her voice trembling. "I know you are up there. Don't make this hard. We can work something out. Julian just wants the files." She took the first step, the second. She reached the middle landing. Then, she stepped onto the oil. It happened in slow motion in my mind. But in reality, it was a blur of violence. Her heel lost all traction. Her foot shot forward as if yanked by a rope. Shriek, Vanya's arms flailed. Grabbing at empty air, the phone flew from her hand, spinning away into the dark. Thud, crack, thud, thud. She tumbled backward down the 12 marble steps she had just climbed. The sound of her body hitting the stone edges was sickening, a wet, heavy rhythm of impact. She landed at the bottom with a bone-jarring crash. Then, silence, followed by a scream that tore through the frozen house. My leg. Oh, God, my leg. The sound was raw, primal. I flinched, but I did not look away. I gripped the crossbow tighter. Help me, Julian. It is broken, Vanya wailed. The syringe. I dropped the syringe. It stuck with me, Julian. A beam of light cut through the dark. Julian had turned his tactical light back on. He walked over to where Vanya lay crumpled at the base of the stairs. Her leg was bent at a horrific angle, the bone pressing against the skin of her expensive trousers. Beside her, the syringe lay on the floor. Empty. The plunger was depressed. You idiot, Julian said. His voice was flat, bored even. I feel cold, Vanya gasped, her hands clawing at his pant leg. The toxin. It was the full dose. Julian, get the antidote. It is in the bag. Please. Julian looked down at her. He looked at the woman carrying his child. He looked at the woman who had helped him plan my murder. He kicked her hand away. The antidote is for the survivor. Vanya, he said coldly. And right now, you are just dead weight. No, she wheezed, her eyes rolling back as the neurotoxin began to shut down her respiratory system. Julian stepped over her twitching body as if she were nothing more than a pile of laundry. He did not look back. He raised his flashlight to the top of the stairs, the beam hitting me in the face, blinding me. Clever trick with the oil, Celia, he called out. But playtime is over. I raised the crossbow and fired blindly into the light. Thwip, the bolt hissed through the air. Ping, it struck the metal railing inches from his head, sending a shower of sparks raining down. Julian ducked, cursing, and killed the light immediately. Missed, he taunted from the dark. Run, Elian pulled me back. He has the advantage now. He is blind, I argued, retreating into the gallery hallway. He cannot see us. Yes, he can, Elian said, his voice laced with dread. Listen, I heard a soft mechanical whir, followed by a high-pitched electronic hum. Night vision, Elian whispered. He keeps a pair of panoramic NVGs in the trunk for hunting. He can see us. Celia, he can see our body heat. He can see us as clear as day in green phosphor. We were no longer fighting on equal ground. We were glowing targets in a shooting gallery. Split up, Elian commanded. He cannot shoot both of us at once. I will draw his fire. You circle back to the balcony. No, I grabbed his arm. I am not using you as bait. I am already the bait, Elian snapped, pulling away. He hates me more than he hates you. I am the one who humiliated him. Go. He shoved me toward the guest wing and sprinted in the opposite direction, toward the open-plan living room. I hesitated for a split second, my heart tearing in two. But I knew he was right. I ran to the left, hugging the wall, trying to make myself as small as possible. Below, I heard Julian moving. He was not walking cautiously anymore. He was moving with speed and confidence. He could see the oil slick. He stepped around it, mounting the stairs 2 at a time. I see you running, little man, Julian's voice echoed, distorted and eerie. You run pretty fast for a cripple. He was chasing Elian. I scrambled into the guest bedroom, my breathing ragged. I needed a vantage point. I needed to see where he was. I crawled to the doorway that overlooked the great room below. Through the banisters, I saw a green laser beam slicing through the darkness. It swept across the furniture, searching. Elian was hiding behind the large sectional sofa. I could not see him, but I knew he was there. Julian stood on the landing, scanning the room below like a Terminator. He looked monstrous, the quad-lens goggles protruding from his face like the eyes of a giant insect. Come out, Elian, Julian crooned. I promise I will make it quick. Just one little needle. You won't feel a thing, just like Mommy didn't feel the cliff. Silence. Then, from the far corner of the room, near the fireplace, a sudden noise erupted. Whir buzz. Greetings, Earthling, take me as your leader. It was a robotic voice, loud and cheerful, piercing the tension like a knife. Lights flashed red, blue, yellow spinning wildly in the dark. Julian spun around, leveling the gun at the source of the noise. It was Elian's old toy robot, the one he had rigged weeks ago. It marched out from behind the curtains, beeping and flashing, rolling directly into the center of the room. Foot, foot, foot. 3 shots rang out in rapid succession. The suppressor made them sound like heavy coughs. The robot exploded into plastic shrapnel. The lights died. The cheerful voice was silenced by a 9mm bullet. Julian lowered the gun, a dark chuckle escaping his throat. Nice try, kid, he laughed, the sound echoing off the cold walls. But you are going to have to do better than Radio Shack tricks. He scanned the room again, the green laser settling on the edge of the sofa where Elian was hiding. Found you, Julian whispered. He raised the gun again, aiming through the sofa cushions. Rade now, Elian, he mocked, twisting his words into a sick nursery rhyme. Daddy promises the last shot will be gentle. I raised my crossbow. I was 50 feet away, at a steep angle. My hands were shaking. I had 1 bolt left loaded. If I missed, he would kill Elian before I could reload. I took a breath. I thought of the empty wheelchair. I thought of the ring on Vanya's dead finger. I thought of the fool he called me. I did not aim for his body. He was wearing a heavy wool coat. The bolt might not penetrate. I aimed for the one thing giving him power. I aimed for the glowing green eyes on his face. My finger tightened on the trigger, but in the split second before the mechanism released, Julian moved. He didn't duck. He lunged. The bolt flew through the dark, not finding his eye as I had hoped, but shattering the plastic casing of the night vision goggles on the left side of his face. Sparks erupted. Julian roared, tearing the smoking, malfunctioning headset from his face and hurling it against the wall. The green laser died, plunging the hallway back into a heavy, suffocating gloom, illuminated only by the faint, ghostly moonlight filtering through the cracks of the shutters I had managed to dent earlier. You missed, he snarled, his voice guttural and wet with rage. You had your shot, Celia, and you missed. I didn't wait for him to recover his vision. I turned and ran, sprinting into the east wing, toward the gallery. It was a long, narrow hall lined with the expensive, soulless art. Julian collected not because he loved it, but because it appreciated in value. I knew this room. I had spent hundreds of hours here, restoring the frames, cleaning the canvas. It was my workspace. Now, it would be his kill box. I heard his footsteps behind me. They were heavy, uneven, but fast. He was closing the distance. I reached the end of the gallery and spun around, backed against the display case that held a 17th century samurai sword locked behind ballistic glass. I couldn't break. I was trapped. Julian emerged from the shadows like a wolf stepping into a clearing. His expensive coat was torn, his face smeared with soot and blood from where the exploding goggles had cut his cheek. He wasn't holding the gun anymore. He must have dropped it when the sparks blinded him. Or perhaps he holstered it because he wanted to do this with his hands. He wanted to feel it. Look at you, he panted, wiping blood from his jaw. He took a step closer, crowding my personal space. Trembling like a leaf. You are pathetic, Celia. You have always been pathetic. I stood my ground, my back pressed against the cold glass. My hands were behind me, gripping the neck of the wine bottle I had filled in the cellar, the cocktail of muriatic acid and hydrogen peroxide. I am not trembling, Julian, I said. My voice surprised me. It wasn't the high-pitched plea of a victim. It was low. It was steady. It sounded like the stones of the mountain itself. He laughed, a dry, hacking sound. Oh, Listen to her. The little mouse grew a squeak. You think because you rigged a few traps you are a player in this game? You are nothing. You are a gold-digging country girl I plucked from a trailer park and dressed in silk. You should be thanking me. I gave you the best 3 years of your miserable life. He took another step. He was arm's length away now. I could smell him, the expensive cologne now mixed with the copper tang of blood and the acrid scent of burnt plastic. You didn't give me a life, I whispered, my fingers uncorking the bottle behind my back. You gave me a script. And you forgot your lines, he hissed, reaching for my throat. The scene ends with you dying. Clara. He used my old name again, the final insult. My name, I said, whipping my hand out from behind my back. Is Celia? I didn't throw the bottle. I swung it in a wide arc, splashing the corrosive liquid directly into his eyes. The reaction was instantaneous. Julian screamed. It wasn't a human sound. It was the sound of an animal being flayed. The acid mixture hit his face, reacting with the sweat and the open wounds from the goggles. Steam hissed from his skin. He clawed at his eyes, staggering back, his legs colliding with a marble pedestal. A bust of Caesar crashed to the floor, shattering into dust. My eyes, you bitch, my eyes, he howled. Blindly swinging his fists, I tried to slip past him, to run toward the exit, but I underestimated his rage. Even blinded, even burning, Julian was a large, powerful man fueled by pure adrenaline. His flailing hand caught my shoulder, spinning me around. He lunged, guided by the sound of my gasp. His hands found my throat. He slammed me back against the oak paneling of the wall. The impact knocked the wind out of me. His thumbs dug into my windpipe, crushing the cartilage. His face was inches from mine, a ruin of blistering red skin and peeling flesh. His eyes were squeezed shut, streaming tears and blood, but his grip was iron. I will snap your neck, he screamed, his spittle hitting my cheek. I will tear your head off. Black spots danced in my vision. I clawed at his wrists, my fingernails digging into his skin. But it was like trying to move a statue. The air was cut off. My lungs burned. The room began to dim, the edges of my world turning gray. This is it, I thought, my arms weakening. I am going to die looking at a monster. Then I heard it, a high-pitched whine, the sound of an electric motor pushed to its absolute limit. Whirr! Julian heard it too. He hesitated, his grip loosening just a fraction as he turned his head, trying to locate the sound through his pain. What? From the darkness of the hallway. A shape emerged. It was low, heavy, and moving fast. It was Elian's wheelchair. But Elian wasn't sitting in it. He was crouching on the footrest, gripping the joystick with both hands, his body curled into a ball to reduce drag. He had bypassed the speed governor, the heavy medical-grade chair, weighing nearly 300 pounds with its lead-acid batteries, was hurtling down the gallery floor at 15 miles per hour. It was a battering ram. Get away from her! Elian screamed. Julian tried to turn, tried to brace himself, but he was too slow and too blind. Crack! The metal footplate of the wheelchair slammed directly into Julian's right shin. The sound of the bone snapping was louder than the gunshot had been. It was a wet, sickening crunch that echoed off the high ceilings. Julian's leg bent unnaturally sideways. The force of the impact lifted him off his feet. He hit the floor hard, screaming in a register I didn't know a man could reach. He rolled on the carpet, clutching his shattered leg, vomiting from the shock of the pain. Elian spun the chair around, the tires squealing on the polished wood. He hopped off, breathless, his eyes wide but fierce. Mom, he yelled. The bow. Finish it. I gasped for air, massaging my bruised throat. Oxygen rushed back into my brain, clearing the gray fog. I looked at the floor. The crossbow had slid across the room when Julian grabbed me. I didn't run. I walked. I walked over to the weapon, picking it up. It felt heavy, solid. I reached into the quiver on my belt and pulled out a fresh bolt. I pulled the string back, the mechanism clicking into place with a sound of finality. Julian was trying to crawl. He was dragging his broken leg, leaving a smear of blood on the pristine Persian rug. He was trying to reach the door, trying to get away from the woman he called weak. "Stay down," I commanded. My voice was raspy, damaged, but it filled the room. Julian froze. He rolled onto his back, looking up blindly in my direction. His face was a mask of chemical burns and terror. "Celia," he wheezed, holding up a shaking hand. "Celia, baby, listen, we can fix this. I have money, offshore accounts, millions. Take it all. Just put the bow down." "I don't want your money, Julian," I said. Raising the crossbow, I aimed not at his heart, but at his shoulder. I didn't want him dead. Not yet. I wanted him pinned. "I want you to listen. Please." Thwack! The crossbow bucked in my hand. The bolt flew true, burying itself deep into the fleshy muscle of his left shoulder. The force of the impact pinned him to the heavy oak wainscoting of the wall behind him. Julian shrieked, his body arching off the floor, but the bolt held him fast. He was a butterfly pinned to a corkboard. He slumped back, sobbing, defeat finally breaking him. "You crazy bitch! You killed me!" "Not yet," I said. Stepping closer, I looked down at him. He looked so small now, so broken. But the night is young. I reached down to grab the pistol he had dropped earlier, intending to secure it, but as my hand closed around the cold steel barrel, a shadow moved in the doorway. "Drop it." I spun around. Vanya was standing there. She looked like a corpse that had clawed its way out of a grave. Her white fur coat was stained with grease and blood. Her leg was dragging uselessly behind her, broken from the fall. Her face was pale, waxy, her lips blue from the neurotoxin that was slowly shutting down her lungs. But in her hand, she held a small, silver Derringer pistol, a backup weapon she must have had in her medical bag, and it was pointed directly at Elian. "Drop the crossbow," Vanya wheezed, her voice thin and reedy. "Or I put a bullet in the brat." "Vanya," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Look at him. Look at Julian. It is over. You need a hospital. That toxin will stop your heart in 10 minutes. "I know," she coughed, pink foam bubbling at the corner of her mouth. "That is why you are going to give me the antidote. Now, or the boy dies. I have nothing left to lose. Celia, I am a dead woman walking." She cocked the hammer. Her hand was shaking violently, which made her even more dangerous. Julian, seeing his chance, let out a wet laugh. "Shoot him! Vanya, shoot the little bastard! Do it!" I looked at Elian. He was standing by his wheelchair, frozen. He looked at me, terrified. I looked at Vanya. She was desperate, irrational. I slowly lowered the crossbow. I placed it on the floor. "Good," Vanya gasped, taking a limping step forward. "Now the antidote. Where is it?" "I don't have the antidote," I said softly. "Liar," she screamed, the gun wavering. "I don't have it," I repeated, reaching into my pocket. "But I have a solution." I pulled my hand out. I wasn't holding a syringe. I was holding a silver Zippo lighter. Julian's lighter. I had taken it from his desk days ago to light candles, and I had kept it in my pocket. Vanya frowned, confused. "What is that? Put your hands up." "Do you smell it?" "Vanya?" I asked, flipping the lid open with a metallic clink. She paused. She sniffed the air. Beneath the smell of burnt plastic and acid, there was something else. Faint, sweet, sickening. Almonds. "When I was in the kitchen," I said, my thumb hovering over the flint wheel. "Before I climbed into the vent, I didn't just hide. I turned the handle on the gas line. I opened the valve. Not the system valve. The manual override." "You are lying," Julian groaned from the wall. "The sensors would have tripped." "You turned the sensors off, Julian," I reminded him, looking him dead in the eye. "When you rebooted the system to hunt us, you disabled the safety protocols to keep the shutters down. The gas has been filling this room for 5 minutes. It is heavy. It is sitting right here at floor level. I looked at Vanya. Chemical gas is highly flammable, isn't it? Especially the kind mixed with an aerosol accelerant? Vanya's eyes widened. She looked at the lighter. She looked at the gun in her hand. If she fired, the muzzle flash would ignite the air just as surely as my lighter would. "You will kill us all," she whispered. "I am already dead. Remember." I smiled. It was a cold, terrifying smile that felt foreign on my face. "That is what the death certificate says. Accidental explosion. You wrote the script. Vanya, I am just directing the final scene." "Don't," she pleaded, lowering the gun slightly. "Celia, please, my baby." "Your baby." I laughed softly. "You were willing to watch my son choke to death an hour ago. Don't talk to me about babies." I sparked the flint. Scritch. A small yellow flame danced into existence. "No," Julian screamed, struggling against the bolt pinning him to the wall. "Drop the gun, Vanya," I commanded. "Drop it, or we all burn together, right here, right now." The flame flickered in the draft. The air around us shimmered with invisible death. It was a Mexican standoff at the gates of hell, and I was the only one holding the key. "Don't shoot," Julian screamed, his voice raw with panic as he struggled against the bolt pinning him to the wall. "The gas, Vanya. The concentration is too high. You will kill us all." But Vanya wasn't listening. The pain of her broken leg, the neurotoxin clouding her mind, and the sight of me holding Julian's fate in my hand had pushed her over the edge. Her eyes were wild, darting between me and the flame in my hand. She didn't see the danger of the gas. She only saw the woman who was ruining her getaway, her payday, her life. "He chose her," Vanya muttered, delirious. "He chose the cripple over me." "Drop the gun," I yelled, shielding Elian with my body. Vanya's hands spasmed. She didn't mean to pull the trigger. I don't think. It was a reflex, a twitch of a dying nervous system. Bang. The sound was small, but the consequence was cataclysmic. The muzzle flash from the Derringer was a spark in a powder keg. The invisible cloud of gas that had been pooling on the floor ignited instantly. Whoosh! A wave of blue fire rolled across the room, expanding with terrifying speed. It wasn't a slow burn. It was a concussion. The pressure wave hit me like a physical wall, throwing Elian and me backward over the sofa just as the world turned white. Boom! The explosion tore through the east wing. The massive, steel-reinforced shutters that had turned our home into a prison were blown outward like tissue paper. Glass, steel, and wood disintegrated. The wall behind Julian and Vanya simply vanished. I landed hard on the carpet, debris raining down on me. My ears were ringing, a high-pitched whine that drowned out everything else. I coughed, tasting smoke and drywall dust. "Elian," I screamed, scrambling to my knees. "I am okay," a small voice choked out from under a pile of sofa cushions. I dragged him out. His face was covered in soot, but he was alive. The blast had been concentrated near the door where the gas was thickest, directing the force outward toward the garden. "We have to go," Elian yelled, pointing at the ceiling. "The structure is compromised." I looked up. The roof of the gallery was groaning. Beams were snapping. Fire was already licking up the curtains, feeding on the oxygen rushing in through the blown-out wall. The house, our smart home fortress, was screaming as it died. Odin's voice was gone, replaced by the roar of the inferno. I grabbed Elian. He tried to run, but his leg buckled. He must have twisted it in the fall. "I cannot run," he cried. "Then I carry you," I said. I scooped him up. He was heavier than he looked, dead weight in my arms. But I didn't feel it. Adrenaline is a mother's greatest weapon. I turned and ran. Not toward the front door, it was blocked by a wall of fire, but toward the gaping hole where the gallery wall used to be. We leaped through the smoke, stepping over the burning wreckage of my life. We tumbled out into the cold night air, landing in the deep snow of the back garden. The shock of the cold was instant, freezing the sweat on my skin. I rolled, shielding Elian from the jagged shards of glass scattered everywhere. I lay there for a second, gasping for breath, watching the orange flames consume the second floor. The heat was intense, battling the winter chill. "Mom, look," Elian whispered, pointing toward the edge of the cliff. I sat up, 20 yards away, near the precipice where the garden ended and the sheer drop began. Two figures were moving in the snow. Julian and Vanya had been blown clear of the house by the blast. Vanya was lying still, a crumpled heap of white fur stained red. She wasn't moving, but Julian was moving. He was a nightmare rising from the grave. His clothes were shredded, smoking. His skin was blackened. The arrow I had shot into his shoulder was gone, likely torn out by the force of the explosion or the fall, leaving a gaping wound. He tried to stand, fell, and then dragged himself up again. He saw us, even in the dark, lit only by the raging fire of the house. I could see his eyes. They were not human. They were voids of pure, unadulterated hate. He didn't care about his pain. He didn't care about the police. He only cared about finishing what he started. He reached into his boot and pulled out a knife, a serrated survival blade he kept strapped to his ankle. "You," he rasped, his voice a broken ruin. He limped toward us, blood trailing in the snow behind him. "If I don't have it, no one does." He wasn't talking about the money anymore. He was talking about control. He was talking about life. "Run, Mom," Elian said, trying to push me away. "He is slow. You can make it to the trees." "No," I said. I stood up. I didn't back away. I planted my feet in the snow. I was done running. I was done hiding in vents. I was done playing games in his house. I looked around for a weapon. Nothing. Just snow and rock. Julian picked up speed. He was fueled by madness. 10 yards, 5 yards. He raised the knife. "Die," he screamed, lunging at me. I braced myself, ready to fight him with my bare hands, ready to tear at his eyes again if I had to. But the blow never came. Suddenly, the night turned into day. Thwop, thwop, thwop. A deafening roar descended from the sky. A column of blinding white light slammed down from above, pinning Julian to the snow like an insect under a microscope. The wind from the rotor wash hit us, stinging my face with ice pellets. Julian froze, shielding his eyes, the knife wavering in his hand. "Drop the weapon. Federal agents." The voice boomed from a loudspeaker in the sky, amplified over the roar of the helicopter. Julian looked up, squinting into the light. He looked confused, like a man waking up from a dream. From the tree lines surrounding the property, shadows materialized, dozens of them, figures clad in black tactical gear, moving with terrifying speed. Red laser dots danced across Julian's chest, 1, 2, 10 of them. "Drop it now." Julian looked at the knife. He looked at me. For a second, I thought he would throw it at me, but then a single shot rang out. Crack. It wasn't a kill shot. It was a sniper round from the ridge. It hit the knife blade, shattering the steel in Julian's hand. Julian screamed, clutching his numb fingers, and collapsed to his knees in the snow. The tactical team swarmed him. I watched as they kicked him flat, zip-tying his hands behind his back. They dragged him away from us, away from his burning kingdom. A man in a heavy FBI jacket walked toward me. He didn't have his gun drawn. He looked at Elian, then at me. "Mrs. Thorne?" he asked, shouting over the noise of the fire and the chopper. "I am Agent Miller. Are you injured?" I shook my head, mute with shock. I looked down at Elian. He was shivering, staring at the agent securing his father. "We got the data packet," Agent Miller said, kneeling down to check Elian. "Your son. He is a brave kid. He sent us everything. The files, the recordings, the schematics. We have been watching the house for an hour, waiting for the extraction team." "An hour?" I whispered. "You watched?" "We couldn't breach the perimeter until the lockdown was lifted or the structure was compromised," the agent explained apologetically. "The blast? It gave us an opening. I looked back at the house. The roof finally gave way, collapsing inward with a shower of sparks that reached for the stars. My clothes, my paintings, the nursery I had hoped to fill one day, it was all ash. But as I felt Elian's small hand slip into mine, squeezing tight, I realized something. The house hadn't been a home, it had been a cage, and now, the cage is gone. "Come on," Agent Miller said, guiding us toward a waiting SUV with flashing lights. "Let's get you warm," as we walked past the spot where Julian lay face down in the snow, screaming obscenities at the ground. I didn't look down. I looked straight ahead. The long night was over. The sun hadn't risen yet, but for the first time in years, I could see the dawn coming. The blanket the paramedic wrapped around my shoulders was heavy and smelled of sterile cotton. But it could not stop the shivering. It was not cold anymore. It was the aftershock of adrenaline leaving my system, draining away to reveal the raw, trembling reality of what we had just survived. I sat on the rear bumper of a black armored SUV, clutching a cup of lukewarm coffee I could not bring myself to drink. Beside me, Elian was being examined by a field medic. He sat stoically, his small face smeared with soot, looking less like a child and more like a weary general surveying a battlefield. I looked out at the scene. My beautiful prison, the architectural marvel of Aspen, was now a skeleton of steel beams wreathed in orange flames. Fire trucks from 3 different counties were spraying arcs of water onto the inferno. But it was a funeral rite, not a rescue. The house was gone. "Mrs. Thorne." I looked up. Agent Miller, the man who had pulled Julian off us, was standing there. He had removed his helmet, revealing a sharp, military haircut and tired eyes. But what caught my attention was the patch on his shoulder. It did not say police. It said FBI. And behind him, standing near the perimeter of the trees, were men who looked very different. They wore no badges, just tactical gray fatigues and night vision mounts. They moved with a predatory grace that unsettled me. "Who are they?" I asked, nodding toward the gray soldiers. "They are not with you." Miller followed my gaze and gave a tight, grim smile. "Let us just say your husband made a lot of enemies. Mrs. Thorne, those men are private contractors hired by Chimera Genetics. They are Ethelgard's biggest competitors. They have been trying to prove Julian was stealing their intellectual property for years." "Chimera," I frowned. "How are they here? How are you here?" Miller looked at Elian. The boy looked up from the medic's penlight, his expression calm. "We did not just get a distress call, Mrs. Thorne," Miller said, his voice filled with a strange mixture of professional respect and disbelief. "At exactly 9:15 tonight, the FBI Cybercrime Division received a massive data packet. It bypassed 3 firewalls and landed directly on the director's private server. It contained 3 terabytes of data, blueprints for illegal chemical weapons, flight logs proving international smuggling, and a folder titled Project Silence, the detailed plan to murder his wife and son for insurance fraud." I stared at Elian. "You sent it while we were in the vent." "I sent it an hour ago," Elian corrected me, his voice raspy from the smoke. "I set up a dead man's switch on my server 2 months ago. If I did not enter a code every 24 hours, the system was programmed to leak everything to the FBI, the news networks, and the dark web. Tonight, when the lockdown started, I manually triggered the upload. I also sent a copy to Chimera Genetics. I knew they would have a strike team closer than the feds." "You invited mercenaries to our house," I whispered, stunned by the sheer scale of his calculation. "I needed guns. Mom," Elian said simply. "The police would have knocked on the door and asked for a warrant. Chimera does not care about warrants. They just wanted to stop Julian from selling their stolen tech." Miller nodded. "The kid is right. Chimera's team secured the perimeter before we even got our boots on the ground. They are the ones who took out the tires on Julian's car so he could not run." I looked over toward the command post they had set up near the gate. Julian was there. He was kneeling in the snow, his hands zip-tied behind his back. He was stripped to his shirt sleeves, shivering violently. His face a mask of burns and dried blood. 2 agents were standing over him with rifles. He wasn't looking at the ground. He was screaming. "I want my lawyer," Julian bellowed, his voice cracking. "This is entrapment. That data is forged. I want Marcus Sterling." "Get me Sterling on the phone right now." "He thinks he can talk his way out of this," I said, a bitter taste in my mouth. "He thinks Marcus will save him. Marcus Sterling." Miller checked his clipboard. "Funny you should mention him." A sleek, silver luxury sedan rolled past the fire trucks, navigating the slush and mud of the driveway with incongruous elegance. It stopped right in front of the police line. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out. He was impeccable in a navy wool coat and a cashmere scarf. Not a hair out of place despite the chaos around him. It was Marcus Sterling, Julian's shark of a lawyer, the man who had drafted our prenup, the man who had smiled at our wedding while knowing exactly what I was signing. Julian saw him. Hope flared in his blackened eyes. He struggled against his restraints, lurching forward. "Marcus!" Julian screamed. "Marcus, thank God! Tell these idiots who I am. Get these cuffs off me. We will sue the department for millions." Marcus walked past the police tape. He didn't look at the agents. He walked straight toward Julian. He stopped 3 feet away, looking down at his client with an expression of mild distaste, as if Julian were a stain on his polished shoes. "Marcus, tell them," Julian pleaded. "The boy hacked my accounts. It is all fake." Marcus reached into his pocket. He didn't pull out a legal brief. He pulled out a cell phone. He turned the screen around so Julian could see it. "Do you recognize this text thread, Julian?" Marcus asked softly. I squinted. It was the message I had received in the kitchen. Kitchen vent above the convection oven. "Go. Now. He's coming back." My breath hitched. "It was you," I whispered. Julian stared at the phone. His confusion morphed into horror. You warned her. You were going to frame me." "Julian," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly in the cold air. "I saw the new ledger entries you made yesterday. You were moving the embezzled funds from the weapon sales into my offshore accounts. You were planning to kill your family, flee to Zurich, and leave me holding the bag for financial fraud." "No, Marcus, that was just—" "I am a lawyer." "Julian," Marcus cut him off, his voice sharp as a razor. "I read the fine print, and I decided that I would rather be a cooperating witness for the prosecution than a co-defendant in a federal treason case. I gave the FBI the access codes to the gate. I gave them the location of your safe house, and I told Celia how to get out." Julian's face crumbled. The arrogance, the narcissism, the belief that he was the smartest man in the room, it all disintegrated. He wasn't a mastermind anymore. He was just a man who had tried to stab everyone in the back, only to find they all had knives of their own. "You traitor," Julian whispered. "Just business," Marcus replied coldly. He turned to Agent Miller. "I have the physical hard drives in my car. Evidence of the bribes to the FDA inspectors. It is all there." "Excellent," Miller said. "Take Mr. Thorne to the transport van." As they dragged Julian away, another drama was unfolding near the ambulance. Paramedics were loading a stretcher. On it lay Vanya. She was conscious, but barely. Her leg was splinted, and she was hooked up to an oxygen tank to counteract the neurotoxin. She saw Julian being hauled away. She saw Marcus handing over the evidence. Self-preservation is a powerful instinct, especially for a woman who has just lost everything. Vanya ripped the oxygen mask off her face. "I want a deal," she screamed, her voice shrill and desperate. "I want immunity." An agent walked over to her. "You have the right to remain silent." "Ma'am." "No, I won't be silent," Vanya yelled, pointing a shaking finger at Julian. "He made me do it. He threatened me. He said he would kill me if I didn't falsify the boy's medical records. The neurotoxin, it was his formula. I just synthesized it. He forced me." Julian spun around, fighting the agents. "You lying witch! You begged me to kill her. You wanted the money for the baby." "There is no baby," Vanya shrieked back, tears streaming down her soot-stained face. "I lied. You idiot. I just wanted the payout. I am not pregnant. I just wanted the diamonds." The revelation hit Julian like a physical blow. He stopped struggling. He stared at Vanya, his mouth hanging open, the baby his legacy. His reason for needing the clean slate was just another lie in a web of lies. He had destroyed his family for a phantom. "No baby," Julian whispered. "Get him out of here," Miller ordered. The agents shoved Julian toward the van. But suddenly, the night sky lit up with a different kind of light. Floodlights. A news helicopter from Denver hovered overhead. On the ground, news vans that had followed the police scanners were breaking through the perimeter. Cameras were rolling. Julian Thorne, the tech billionaire, the genius of Aspen, was being broadcast live to the nation. He looked up at the cameras. He saw his own reflection in the lens of a news crew 10 feet away. He saw the monster he truly was burned, bloody, handcuffed, and utterly defeated. He opened his mouth to scream, to deny it, to spin a story. But no sound came out. He just sagged, a puppet whose strings had been cut. I watched him disappear into the back of the armored van. The heavy doors slammed shut, sealing him away from the world he had tried to conquer. Elian tugged on my sleeve. I looked down. "He is gone." "Mom," he said quietly. "Yes," I said, pulling the blanket around both of us. "He is gone." Marcus walked over to us. He stopped a respectful distance away. "Celia," he said, nodding his head. "Elian, I arranged for a hotel suite in town. It is secure. And I have already filed restraining orders and a freeze on all joint assets, so the government cannot seize your personal funds." I looked at the man who had helped save us. But I felt no gratitude. He was a snake who had bitten another snake. "Thank you, Marcus," I said coldly. "But don't think this makes us friends. You helped him for years." "I did," Marcus admitted, his face unreadable. "And I will spend the next 10 years in court making sure he never sees the light of day. Consider it my penance." He handed me a card, turned, and walked back to his silver car. Agent Miller stepped in. "Mrs. Thorne, we need to get you to the hospital to check for smoke inhalation, and then we need a statement." "You will get your statement," I said. Standing up, my legs felt steady now. The fear was gone. The victim was gone. I looked at the ruins of the house one last time. The fire was dying down, leaving only blackened beams and ash. It was ugly, but it was honest. "Come on, Elian," I said. "Let's go." We walked toward the ambulance, leaving the wreckage behind. The cameras flashed as we passed, capturing the image of the woman and the boy who had survived the impossible. I didn't hide my face. I looked straight into the lens. I wanted Julian to see me on the news in his cell tonight. I wanted him to see that I wasn't crying. I was standing. 6 months is a long time in the world of news cycles and trending topics. But in the slow, quiet healing of a human heart, it is barely a heartbeat. Yet, as I sat in the back row of the federal courtroom in Denver, listening to the heavy wooden gavel strike the block, I felt an epic end. "In the matter of the United States versus Julian Thorne," the judge intoned, his voice grave and echoing off the mahogany walls. "On the counts of conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, the manufacture of illegal biological weapons, and high treason, this court finds the defendant guilty." I did not hold my breath. I did not squeeze my hands together until they turned white. I simply watched. Julian stood at the defense table. The arrogance that had once defined his posture, the way he used to wear his suits like armor, was gone. He wore an orange jumpsuit that hung loosely on his frame. His hair, once perfectly styled, was shaved close to his scalp, revealing the jagged red scars on the left side of his face, the permanent souvenir of the explosion he had engineered. He did not look back at the gallery. He did not look at me. He stared at the table, a hollowed-out shell of a man who had realized too late that he was not the protagonist of this story. "Mr. Thorne," the judge continued, peering over his spectacles, "your crimes display a level of depravity and calculation that shocks the conscience. You turned a home into a weapon and a family into a commodity. It is the judgment of this court that you be sentenced to life in imprisonment without the possibility of parole, to be served at the ADX Florence Supermax facility." There was no gasp from the crowd. The courtroom was packed with reporters, former employees of Ethelgard, and the victims of his financial schemes. But the room was silent. It was the silence of a burden finally being set down. Julian was led away in shackles. The chains rattled a sound so different from the expensive click of his Italian leather shoes. As he reached the side door, he paused. For a fleeting second, he turned his head. His eyes met mine. I expected to see hate. I expected to see the monster who had tried to stab me in the snow. But there was nothing. No fire, no rage, just a vast, empty grayness. He was already a ghost. The door closed behind him, and Julian Thorne ceased to exist in my world. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright, blinding sunlight of a Colorado spring. The air smelled of wet earth and melting snow, clean and sharp. "Mrs. Montrose," a reporter shouted, thrusting a microphone toward me. "How do you feel? Is it justice?" I stopped. I adjusted my sunglasses. "My name is Celia," I said softly, correcting the title. "And yes, it is finished." I walked to the waiting car where a young boy was sitting in the passenger seat, tapping away on a tablet, but it was not a wheelchair-accessible van. It was a standard, sturdy SUV. Elian looked up as I opened the door. He was wearing a blazer that was slightly too big for him and a pair of blue jeans. His cheeks were rosy, filled out with 6 months of real food and freedom. "Did he get life?" Elian asked, not looking up from his screen. "Life without parole," I confirmed, buckling my seatbelt. Elian nodded once. He tapped the screen again. "Good. I just finished liquidating the last of his hidden assets that Marcus found. The wire transfer to the charity account is complete." "You left him nothing?" I asked, starting the engine. "I left him exactly what he left us," Elian replied, a small, dark smile touching his lips. "Zero." We drove away from the city, heading not toward the mountains of Aspen, but toward the rolling foothills of Boulder. The empire of Ethelgard Biotics had collapsed within weeks of the arrest. The stocks plummeted to zero. The assets were seized by the government, and the patents were invalidated, but from the ashes of Julian's greed. We had built something else. Using the settlement money from the divorce which Marcus Sterling had ruthlessly secured for me before Julian's assets were frozen and the substantial damages awarded by the court. I had started a project. It was not a grand villa. It was a renovated brick building on the outskirts of town, surrounded by old oak trees and playgrounds. We pulled up to the gate. A modest sign hung above the entrance, the Montrose Center for Gifted Youth. "Ready for your big day?" I asked, turning to Elian. He took a deep breath. For a moment, the genius hacker vanished, replaced by a nervous 10-year-old boy. He looked at his legs. "Do you think I will take a trip? My left ankle is still a little stiff from therapy." "You walked out of a burning house carrying a smoke grenade," I reminded him, reaching over to straighten his tie. "You can walk across a stage." We walked inside. The auditorium was packed, not with investors or shareholders, but with scientists, engineers, and families. This was the annual Young Innovators Symposium, and Elian was the keynote speaker. I took my seat in the front row. I watched as the dean of the university introduced him. "Our next presenter is a young man who proves that age is no barrier to brilliance. Please welcome Elian Montrose." Elian walked onto the stage. He did not roll. He walked. His gait was strong, steady, with a rhythm that was all his own. He stood behind the podium, had to adjust the microphone down, and looked out at the sea of faces. "6 months ago," Elian began, his voice clear and amplified, "my mother and I were trapped in a house that could not smell danger. We trusted technology to protect us, But the technology was blind to the chemical composition of the air we breathed. He pressed a button on a remote. A holographic projection appeared behind him. It showed a small, sleek device, no larger than a smoke detector. "This is the Canary," Elian said. "It is not a smart home system. It does not lock your doors or dim your lights. It does one thing, and it does it perfectly. It uses a new type of spectroscopic sensor to detect over 500 different toxic compounds, including odorless gases like carbon monoxide and synthesized neurotoxins. It costs $40 to manufacture, and I am releasing the patent to the public domain today." The audience erupted. People stood up. Cameras flashed. I watched him through a blur of tears. I remembered the boy slumped in the wheelchair, drooling fake saliva, hiding his brilliance to survive. I remembered the boy who had handed me a crossbow in a ventilation shaft. Now, he was saving thousands of lives so no one else would have to fight in the dark. He looked down at me from the stage. He didn't smile for the cameras. He smiled at me. That evening, we drove home. Our new house was nothing like the glass fortress in Aspen. It was a 2-story craftsman cottage with peeling white paint and a porch that creaked when you stepped on it. It had drafty windows and a manual deadbolt that required a physical brass key to open. I loved every inch of it. Inside, the living room was warm, lit not by recessed LEDs, but by a crackling wood fire in the stone hearth. There were no cameras in the eyes of the paintings. There were no microphones in the teddy bears. I sat on the overstuffed sofa with a mug of hot chocolate. Elian sat on the rug in front of the fire, playing with a golden retriever puppy we had adopted from the shelter last week. The dog, whom we named Spark, was chewing happily on an old slipper. Elian tossed a tennis ball for Spark, then turned to look at the fire, the flames reflected in his dark eyes. He grew quiet, the excitement of the speech fading into a pensive silence. "Mom," he asked softly. "Yes, sweetie." He poked the fire with an iron poker. "Do you ever worry?" "About what?" "About me?" He turned to look at me. "I hacked the federal database. I made a chemical bomb out of cleaning supplies. I almost killed a man with a wheelchair. I am not like the other kids at the center." I set my mug down. I slipped off the sofa and sat on the rug beside him. I took his hand, the hand that had cut the wires, the hand that had held mine in the freezing dark. "Are you asking if I am afraid of you?" I asked gently. Elian nodded, looking down. "Julian said I was a monster. He said I was cold." "Julian was a mirror, Elian," I said, lifting his chin so he had to look at me. "He only saw his own reflection in you, but I see you. I see the boy who waited 2 years to save himself, but only acted when he needed to save me. I see the boy who gave away $1 million invention today because he wanted people to be safe." I brushed the hair back from his forehead. "You are not normal, Elian. You are extraordinary. You are strong in a way that terrified a weak man like your father. But you don't terrify me. We have walked through fire together. We have frozen together. We are not just mother and son." I smiled, pulling him into a hug. "We are a team, and teams don't fear each other. They watch each other's backs." Elian buried his face in my shoulder. I felt him take a deep, shuddering breath, letting go of the last remnants of the paralyzed boy he had been forced to play. "We are a team," he whispered back. I looked past him, out the bay window. The snow in the yard was melting, revealing patches of green grass underneath. The icicles were dripping from the eaves, counting down the seconds until winter was truly gone. The nightmare of the glass house felt 1,000,000 miles away, a bad dream that had burned up in the sunrise. I had lost a husband, but I had found a son. I had lost a house, but I had found a home. "Come on," I said, standing up and pulling him with me. "I think Spark needs a walk, and I promised we would make homemade pizza tonight. And guess what?" "What?" Elian asked, wiping his eyes. "I bought a fire extinguisher for the kitchen." I winked. "Just in case your cooking is as explosive as your chemistry." Elian laughed a real, bright sound that filled the imperfect, drafty, wonderful room. We walked to the door. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the simple brass key. I unlocked the door, not with a code, not with a voice command, but with my own hand. We stepped out into the cool evening air, under a sky full of stars that were finally, beautifully, ours. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I poured a lot of emotion into retelling this journey, and I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening on your commute, while cooking dinner, or maybe relaxing before bed? Please let me know in the comments below. I love reading your stories and connecting with you all. If you enjoyed Celia and Elian's battle for freedom, please consider subscribing to the Crimson Drama Stories channel, hitting that like button, and pressing the hype button to help this story reach more people who love a good thriller. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep bringing you these intense, emotional adventures. Stay safe, and see you in the next story.